Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Make sure you lock the door on your way out, she said, tossing her gym bag over her shoulder like it didn't still smell like his cologne. I hadn't even said anything yet. I just stood in the hallway with a grocery bag in one hand and a receipt sticking to my thumb. I remember it because the receipt felt warmer than her voice. She walked past me, earbuds already in, typing something with that little half-smile she always used when she was lying. She was wearing his hoodie. I knew it wasn't mine. Mine didn't have a bleach stain shaped like Texas on the sleeve. The door clicked shut behind her. I dropped the grocery bag. The eggs broke. All of them. And I just stared at the mess like it might explain how I got here. Like maybe the yolks would form letters that spelled out Howard. Wake up. But I didn't wake up. Not then. Instead, I crouched down with a roll of paper towels and did what I always did. Quietly cleaned up someone else's mess. I'm not dramatic. I don't yell. I overthink text messages and apologize when someone bumps into me. I write checklists for Saturday errands and feel guilty throwing away birthday cards. So no, I didn't confront her that night. Or the next. But I noticed more things. Like how she laughed in the hallway on the phone but got silent when she walked into our room. How she stopped eating the meals I made but told me not to take it personally. How she called him a friend from spin class, but didn't even own a bike. How she asked if we could split finances for a little while, just to simplify things. Simplify what? It all came to a head the night I found the note in her coat pocket, written in his handwriting on the back of a parking ticket. It said, "Can't wait till he's out of the picture." And that was the moment I knew I wasn't even a person anymore. I was a picture, a backdrop, a placeholder in my own life. So I started writing a letter. Not a love letter. Not a revenge note. A resignation. From her. From this role. From the quiet ghost I had become in my own home. I folded it neatly. I sealed it. And I placed it inside the one thing she actually touched every morning, her vitamin organizer. She wouldn't find it right away. But when she did, I'd already be gone. The morning she found the letter, I was 2 hours into a long drive with no destination. I didn't even pack properly. I just threw a backpack into the passenger seat, tossed in a change of clothes, a bottle of Advil, and the last photograph we took together, the one she framed but never hung. I don't know why I brought it. Maybe I wanted to remind myself I hadn't imagined everything. I left her the letter and the keys to the house, along with a handwritten note taped to the coffee machine that said, "Don't bother calling." She did anyway. 9 missed calls by the time I stopped at a gas station in Iowa. The first voicemail was angry, the second confused, the third was just silence. I didn't listen to the rest. The resignation letter wasn't some dramatic blow-up. It was quiet, like me. I told her I wasn't going to compete with a man who offered less and still somehow got more. I wrote that I'd finally realized she wasn't interested in a partner. She wanted an audience. Someone to applaud her spontaneity and laugh at her every half-funny joke. I said I was tired of clapping. She read it? That I know for sure, because by the time I checked into a cheap motel that night, she had texted me a photo of it with the words, "Are you serious?" Yes. For once I laid on that creaky motel bed and stared at the ceiling, half expecting to feel some kind of victory. Instead, I just felt hollow, like I had opened a window expecting fresh air and got hit with cold wind instead. Freedom is weird like that. It sounds heroic in theory, but when you've been trapped in routine for over a decade, even escape feels like grief. Meanwhile, she was home with her lazy lover, Clay, the guy who always forgot his wallet, who borrowed my tools and never returned them, who once asked me if we had any more of that good toilet paper. The man who literally sat in my chair and said, "You work too much, bro." I wanted to scream, not just at him but at myself. How had I allowed this? But here's the thing. She never expected me to leave. She thought I'd keep absorbing the disrespect like I always had, that I'd keep fixing things around the house while she found herself in someone else's arms. She thought the safe, boring man didn't know how to walk away. She was wrong. And she was about to find out just how much I had prepared behind the scenes. Because the resignation letter wasn't the only thing I left behind. I didn't plan to disappear completely. Not at first. I just wanted space. Silence. I wanted her to feel, for once, what it was like to come home and find something missing that she couldn't replace. She thought she held all the cards, but what she didn't know was that I'd spent the last 6 months quietly preparing for this. It started as a coping mechanism. I created a folder on my work laptop titled Budget Forecasts, Q4, but it had nothing to do with spreadsheets. Inside were journal entries, screenshots, bank statements, and photos, not of her with Clay, but of me. Smiling. Alone. Peace. I didn't even know I needed those until I saw the difference in my own eyes. She never noticed how distant I'd become because she was too distracted trying to manage her double life. But the truth? I noticed everything. The lies got lazy. She forgot she already told me her spin class was on Thursdays, not Monday nights. She left her phone face up on the couch with a notification from Clay that said, "Tonight, wine glass fire." And worst of all, she stopped lying well. That's when I realized she didn't fear losing me. She assumed I'd never leave, that I was too soft, too slow to act. So I did something quiet but irreversible. 2 weeks before I left, I transferred half of our joint savings, the half that was mine, into a separate account she didn't know existed. I didn't hide it. I left the transaction marked clearly in our shared budget tracker, knowing she never bothered to look at it. I wasn't stealing anything. I was taking back what I'd built. Every dollar I'd earned while she giggled in candlelight with someone who couldn't even keep a job longer than 3 months. But the real surprise wasn't in the money. It was in the Dropbox link I emailed to her right after she texted, "Are you serious?" The message just said, "This is what I've been doing while you were out finding yourself." Inside that folder were months of proof, not of her betrayal but of my clarity. Voice memos where I recorded late-night thoughts. Videos of myself explaining why I was finally done. Clips of me walking through the empty house, pointing out the little things she used to care about. The dying plant on the windowsill, the crooked frame in the hallway she always promised to fix, the forgotten anniversary card still sealed on the top shelf. And at the end, one short video of me sitting at the kitchen table, saying only this, "You stopped seeing me, so now I'm letting you look at what you lost." I didn't send it to punish her. I sent it to remind her that I existed, that I wasn't just a background character in her romance arc with Clay the philosopher barista. And from the 3-word reply I got 20 minutes later, I knew she finally understood. It simply read, "Please come back." But by then, I was already knocking on a different door. It wasn't a woman I expected to see. Not her, not there, not like that. When the door opened, I was standing outside in the dim glow of a porch light, gripping a plastic bag of clothes that had wrinkled in the back seat of my car. I hadn't planned to go to her place. My hands were still shaking when I rang the doorbell. I could have gone to a hotel again or just driven until I ran out of road. But something in me wanted to be known by someone who used to see me, before I got small. "Howard," she said, her voice half a question, half a memory. "Carla, my ex-fiancée. We hadn't spoken in over 15 years. Not since she'd left me 2 months before our wedding with nothing more than a note taped to my apartment door that said, 'I'm not the one.' Back then, it had wrecked me. But standing there now, I didn't feel the same ache. I felt something stranger, relief. She hadn't been the one, and maybe that had saved me from wasting even more of my life waiting to be chosen. "I'm sorry to show up like this," I said. I didn't know where else to go. She didn't ask questions. She just stepped aside and let me in the same way I used to let Blythe in, before I realized she never really stayed. Carla made us tea. Her place was quiet, nothing fancy. Plants in the window, mismatched mugs. A single photo of her with a cat I didn't recognize. She didn't ask about Blythe until I was ready. And when I finally told her everything, she just listened. No judgment. No smugness. Just the occasional nod and the occasional hand to her mouth when something stung too much. "That's not a lazy lover," she said at one point. "That's a parasite." We both laughed, and I nearly cried from the sound of it. Not because it was funny, but because it reminded me I still had a laugh in me. We stayed up for hours. She offered the couch. I took it, but I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering what Blythe was doing in that exact moment. Was she crying? Screaming at Clay? Reading through all the files again, trying to find a version of herself she didn't hate? Or was she just brushing her teeth like nothing happened? I didn't want to know. Not really. But the next morning at 6:13 a.m. I got the message that changed everything. It wasn't from Blythe. It was from Clay. The message was just one line. She told me everything. I didn't sign up for this. At first, I didn't even realize it was from Clay. The number wasn't saved, but when I clicked on the thread, I saw the previous conversation. All of it one-sided. Dozens of old texts from him to Blythe. Screenshots she'd apparently forwarded to me in a panic, hoping to convince me she was just lost, not cruel. But this new message? This was the first time he had ever reached out to me directly. I sat up on Carla's couch, heart pounding. The room was still dim with morning haze, and I could hear her kettle starting to whistle in the kitchen. I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the screen, rereading his words, trying to figure out what they even meant. She told me everything. Everything? What part? That she'd been lying to both of us? That she'd turned our home into a stage for her fantasy life? Or that I had finally quit? Not just on her, but on the quiet humiliation she forced me to swallow day after day. I didn't sign up for this. That line hit harder than it should have. Because honestly, neither did I. 10 minutes later, he sent another message. You should know. She's not okay. She said she made a mistake. A mistake. 11 years reduced to a mistake. Like she had just taken a wrong turn on the way to a yoga class and accidentally demolished a marriage. I didn't know why Clay was messaging me. Was he trying to clear his conscience? Trying to bond over shared regret? Or maybe he was just another coward looking for someone else to mop up his emotional mess. I told Carla everything, even the texts. She sat down across from me, holding her tea like it was the only thing keeping her from throwing something. You know what this sounds like? She said. He's trying to hand her back to you. The idea made my stomach churn. Not because I didn't believe her, but because it made sense. Clay wasn't built for consequences. He liked stolen moments, candlelit secrets, and the thrill of forbidden things. But the second reality crept in, the bills, the silences, the emotional weight. He wanted out, and she suddenly wanted back in. Too bad I was already stepping out. Later that day, I booked a small cabin in a lakeside town I used to visit during college. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not Carla. Not my sister. Not even the one friend I still had from my wedding party. But as I packed up the car again, Clay's final message came in. She's planning something. She said if you don't answer, she's showing up. And just like that, the storm wasn't over. It was only gathering. Took her 3 days to find me. I don't know how she did it. I hadn't posted anything, hadn't answered calls, hadn't even used my name when I booked the lakeside cabin. I'd used my old college alias, the one from back when I thought being mysterious made me interesting. And yet, late on a Thursday afternoon, I saw a familiar white SUV crawling up the gravel path like a ghost with unfinished business. I was sitting on the porch with a cup of terrible instant coffee and a book I wasn't really reading when I heard the tires crunch. My stomach folded in on itself. Not fear, not excitement, something in between. A bitter knowing. Blythe stepped out slowly, like she wasn't sure which version of me she was about to face. She didn't slam the door. She didn't wear makeup. She didn't even bring a coat, though it was cold enough for one. But the worst part? She didn't come alone. He got out of the passenger side. Clay. Same smug expression, same stupid boots, same confusion about whether he belonged in any room that required accountability. They walked toward me together, not holding hands, not talking, just walking. Like two people who had driven in silence for miles because neither wanted to be the first to admit how badly they'd messed up. I stood but didn't speak. Blythe looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just finally stopped shrinking around her. Her eyes flicked over the porch, the coffee, the paperback beside me. She opened her mouth once, then closed it. It was Clay who spoke first. She wanted to talk. I offered to drive. I nodded slowly. You drove her here to apologize? No, Blythe interrupted. He drove me because I asked him to. Still not answering the question, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. She stepped up to the porch. I read everything. The letter, the videos, the journal entries. I didn't know you were. She paused, swallowed hard. I didn't know you were in that much pain. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to save her from the silence she'd earned. I made a mistake, she continued. No, I made 100, but I'm not here to beg. I need to say this to your face. Clay stood awkwardly behind her like an extra in a movie he didn't realize wasn't about him. I thought you were the boring one, she said quietly. But you were just the only one who ever saw the whole version of me, even when I didn't deserve it. I felt my jaw clench. And yet, you picked the one who only liked the edited version. She looked at Clay. He didn't flinch. Maybe he knew it too. She turned back to me. I'm not asking to come back. I just didn't want the last thing between us to be a message. You deserved to be looked in the eye. Then she did something unexpected. She reached into her bag and handed me something. An envelope. Thick. Heavy. She said, "This is for you. Not to fix anything. Just to finally be honest." I took it. She and Clay turned and left. No hug. No dramatic music. Just the sound of gravel under tires fading into the trees. I stood there, staring at the envelope in my hand. And I wasn't ready to open it. Not yet. I didn't open the envelope that night. I watched a documentary about migrating geese instead. Then I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering what version of the truth she'd finally decided I was worthy of. I thought about throwing it away. I thought about setting it on fire in the fireplace and pretending it never existed. But by the time the sun cracked through the trees and lit up the far side of the cabin, curiosity had worn down my pride. I sat at the tiny wooden table, tore the flap carefully, and pulled out a stack of handwritten pages. The first line almost knocked the breath out of me. I didn't fall for Clay. I fell away from myself. She didn't beg in the letter. That surprised me. She didn't defend what she did either. No excuses. She told me she started seeing Clay not because he was exciting or special, but because he didn't remind her of who she used to be. With me, she saw the version of herself she had given up on. The one with big dreams, Sunday journals, and a soft heart. She said I hadn't changed. She had. And instead of facing the woman she'd become, she blamed the one person who never stopped loving her. She said she kept Clay around because he was easy to impress, and I wasn't, because I saw through the masks, and Clay didn't even know she wore one. But the letter shifted midway through. It got darker. She wrote that after I left, she'd looked through all the files I sent her. The journals, the clips, the resignation, and something started breaking down inside her. Not just guilt, shame, a kind of grief she hadn't prepared for. Not for losing me, but for realizing how little she'd known me at all. She said reading my words felt like hearing a stranger describe a man she never gave herself the time to meet. Then came the final paragraph. You should know the truth. Clay didn't know about the money. He thought I left you months ago. When you left, he panicked. He never wanted me, not fully. He wanted a version of me I couldn't maintain. I think he stayed because he thought he'd win something. But when you walked away without a fight, he saw there was nothing left to win. He's leaving. I didn't feel satisfaction reading that. I felt cold. Not out of vengeance, but from confirmation. She'd never chosen Clay over me. She'd chosen to disappear from herself. And now that she realized it, she wanted me to carry the weight of her return. But I wasn't the same man she left. And I wasn't planning to stay still long enough to become him again. I folded the letter and set it down gently beside my coffee cup. There was no anger left in me. Just stillness. A strange, heavy calm. Like the quiet after a storm when the power's out, and you realize how loud your house used to be. Blythe's words weren't manipulative. They were real. And maybe that's what made it harder to let go. She hadn't begged or promised to change. She just exposed herself. Finally. But I knew what she wanted, not necessarily to come back, but to be forgiven in a way that would allow her to move on, not me. And I couldn't do that. Not for her. Because what she broke wasn't just our relationship. She broke the part of me that made excuses for people who only see your worth when you're gone. Later that afternoon, I wrote her one final message. Thank you for the truth. I believe you meant it, but I've already started living in a world where I'm not waiting for you to understand me. And I really like it here. No hate, no bitterness, just release. 2 weeks later, I moved into a small rental back near the city. Not the old house, not even close. I started painting again. Not well, not consistently, but I stopped doing it for anyone else's validation. I reconnected with my sister. I found a quiet little community gym where no one knew my history. I signed up for a woodworking class just because it made no sense and scared me a little. And Carla? She didn't become a rebound. She became a friend, the kind who doesn't need you to bleed to prove you're alive. We talk every few days. No pressure. No what-ifs. Just kindness without expectation. Last week, I sat by the lake again, alone. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel lonely. I felt peaceful. I realized I hadn't lost my wife to another man. I'd lost her to herself. But in the process, I found me again. And honestly, that's a trade I'll never regret. And that's how it ends. Not with revenge. Not with some grand reconciliation. Just with a man who stopped begging to be seen and started choosing himself. Now I want to hear from you. Was there a moment in this story that hit you hard? Have you ever walked away from someone who only noticed your worth when you left? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your stories matter too. This has been Reddit Confessions. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who might need to hear it.